this video is opinion, but I'm going to come straight out and say that rearming your character in Star Citizen really isn't fun. We've had the new inventory and medical systems in the game for just over a patch cycle now, and I've had plenty of time to play around with the way death and inventory work. It has changed a lot about the game, and I think mostly for the positive, though it does make things more difficult for org events, but something has really felt off with it for me when it comes to dying and getting prepped for battle again. At first I thought I was just opposed to the idea of losing items when you die, but it isn't that exactly. It's the rearming. Having to move every single item individually back onto my character is really not fun. I think this system could be very easily improved upon by giving us savable loadout presets, or something along those lines. A system that allows you to save what your character currently has on them and will automatically pull the items for that loadout for you when rearming, provided the items are actually available in the local inventory. There are times already when I will die in combat or worse to a bug and just lose the motivation rather than to go through the one by one drag and drop of all armor, weapons, mags, med pens, utility tools, backpack and backpack contents again. Maybe it would be a good idea to minimize the tedium here and allow saving of presets. This would also allow a little easier and more fluid use of casual clothing instead of just armor all the time. I don't think losing everything when you die has delivered the sense of consequences of death CIG intended. I feel like it does initially, maybe on your first few runs after a wipe or starting out, but once you have 10 sets of your loadout or extra gear stored away, I just personally am taking as many risks or dying as frivolously as I ever did. I can see a mechanical positive in giving players a reason to spend credits regularly on equipment, and so I do see merit to the system. And re-equipping every single item we carry by hand is a consequence to death, I guess, but it isn't compelling. It's just annoying. When I actively go to my corpus marker to recover my gear, it's never about the loss of gear, it's about the one-click ability to re-equip everything by simply dragging the undersuit onto my character, because the current inventory-based method of rearming is very tedious. On a related inventory note, we really need a better way of moving items around. At Skunkworks, we run a lot of community events, and one of the logistical annoyances we face often is that it is really difficult now to make use of medical beds for respawning. Before the new medical system, you could just bring a ship with medical beds. Back then, even use the Cutlass Red, which was just a godsend, and you would maybe need to bring a couple of spare guns. Everything else you had on you though was not a concern, you just came back with it when you respawned. If you want to make use of a ship for respawning mid-event now, then you've really got to bring a bunch of spare loadouts along with you. It is pointless respawning on a ship if you have no equipment available to use and can't even leave the ship due to not having a helmet, as unlike at stations, when you respawn on a ship you are not even given the basic white undersuit and helmet. No, you have to arrange with the owner of the ship to move a bunch of gear onto their ship beforehand, and at the moment you've got to be on board the Carrack or 890 to move your gear aboard, and the ship itself needs to be within the armistice zone of wherever your gear is. This means that up to 48 people need to drag each individual item from their inventories to the ship, and this goes for recovering gear unused at the end of the night as well. Again, it just feels like a cumbersome solution to the problem. What would really be convenient, I feel, for organised groups trying to make these things work in the game is some kind of storage box that can be created directly from the inventory, filled by a player with gear and moved around independently. Something like the old inventory boxes or big storage boxes you find when a ship explodes maybe, but something that can be loaded up with whatever you need at your own convenience and then moved aboard any ship that can carry it. I guess it would need to be labelled or marked or something, or maybe even just a HUD icon may do, so that you can identify it among other such boxes, but to my mind this would be a huge quality of life improvement for the new system. Also, why is there no move all button when unloading ships? I guess a possible answer to that question is realism, that it takes time to unload a ship. My answer to the idea is I guess yeah, you can go to that level of realism, but why would you want to? When they introduced force effects to ships recently, I was left asking, who is this for exactly? For those who don't know what I mean here, when I started playing last year, you could freely move up and around the inside of ships while they were in motion, and it was incredible. So unique and allowed for some really amazing moments. Just little things like standing over a pilot's shoulder as he landed the ship, or firing at ground targets from a Cutlass Black as we reinserted to a ground battle event. Now, when the ship makes even relatively calm maneuvers, you are thrown to the ground and in some hilarious cases like the Cutlass Steel, out of the ship entirely. The door gunners on the Cutlass steel are subject to these force effects, rendering these extra guns basically useless. I have personally been thrown clean out of the ship on 2 separate occasions. That Star Trek feeling of walking around a Carrack while it's on its way to where the action or exploration is happening, you can't do that now, not really. You end up falling over all the time. Some would argue the case for realism again here, but I mean, the ships have gravity generators, so we're not exactly going for hard realism here anyway. I just feel like the ability to walk around a moving ship is a very unique aspect of Star Citizen, and to artificially limit that, especially on the larger ships where moving around them is more of a necessity, is poorly thought out. This mirrors my feeling on the inability to move all items from a ship. Maybe it isn't totally realistic, no, but you are reducing player tedium by allowing it, and giving the player a better experience if you do. The loss of paid items and subscriber flair is another really messy situation that came along with the new inventory. I still do not know how CIG plans to fix this problem. My suggestion is making use of some of the lost and found desks at some of the spaceports, as I feel this would kind of fit diegetically. But I have to ask, when it comes to the rare or subscriber items, does anybody even use these things anymore? I remember in the lead up to the inventory system there was all this talk of people looting other players for their rare armor and subscriber stuff, and I just don't think people work this way. I know I want a loadout that I can reliably replace if it is lost. And remember, gear can still be lost to out and out bugs, not just combat or accidents. As soon as you say something is lost for good, I think people will just stop using that thing. And I think this goes for both sides of the looting transaction. In most combat, when you're shooting at someone, you're not looking at what gear they're carrying, you're just trying to kill them. Because if you don't kill them quickly, they're going to kill you. I have heard that there is some concern that people would farm these items to other players once a recovery location is added to the game. I don't think even having a recovery location would change people no longer using these items, for more or less the same reasons I don't like rearming right now. It would be extremely tedious to have to go back to one of these recovery kiosks to replace that item every time, and the law of convenience just says no. When I die, I want to be able to get back into the fun stuff as quickly as possible, and I suspect this is true of a lot of players. Making extra trips for specific items is a behaviour that would just die off to entropy. I also kind of feel like the down state in the game could be hugely improved upon. It was touted as something you'd end up in way more than outright death, but I don't think this is played out that way yet. And there are 2 key problems with the system, I think. The threshold between downed and dead are too close together, and the down marker is just as much an indicator for your enemies as it is your friends. The first of these problems is the biggest crux, because so many attacks or situations result in insta-death, and a trip back to the rearming item by item, instead of a down state offering potential rescue from the aforementioned inventory management. And it is a difficult problem to solve while sticking within the realms of realism, as humans are just naturally fragile creatures. I do feel the down/dead states need to have a more forgiving margin between them though. The second problem is maybe easier to fix. Basically, when you go into the down state, a marker is placed on you that communicates to players around you that you are down. This I'm not dead marker is intended to help medics responding to medical rescue beacons find you and revive you. On one of the earlier releases there was no marker, and sometimes finding down players to rescue was very difficult in a bunker full of bodies, so I totally get the logic behind this marker, but the marker also serves as an indicator to opponents in combat that you are not quite dead yet, and it's basically a death sentence to anyone with an active hostile nearby. Hell, the first thing we do during Skunkworks events when entering a space we've just captured is double tap any wounded enemy. It is the early stages of both inventory and the death mechanics, though I am told that death is going to be made even more consequential in future. Again, I don't feel like this is the right direction to go, but if CIG are committed to it, then we're all along for the ride and we'll have to make the best of it. I do really hope we see some streamlining of loadouts and rearming in game though, and inventory management in general. Again, this is just the opinion of a relatively new player in the verse, although I do feel like I've gained enough experience now to comment on these features, and I welcome your counterpoints in the comments below. Oh, and maybe we can start a petition for the ability to wear hats with undersuits again. Make the beanie great again. As always, I want to thank all of you at home for watching and send out a very special thank you to all of our amazing patrons, who you can see on screen right now. Thank you all for your very generous support of the channel. I am very grateful to all of you for following and supporting what we do, and I look forward to sharing some of the adventures we have coming up with you guys. If you want to show your support for the channel in other ways, hit the thumbs up to leave a like, or share this video with a friend. It all helps. If you're thinking of starting Star Citizen yourself, use the referral code in the description below to gain an extra 5,000 credits when signing up for a new account, and we'll be back with more from Star Citizen very soon.